أكبر محمد وآل محمد صلوات. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الرحمن علم القرآن خلق الإنسان علمه البيان. الشمس والقمر بحسبان والنجم والشجر يسجدان. والسماء رفعها ووضع الميزان ألا تطغوا في الميزان وأقيموا الوزن بالقسط ولا تخسروا الميزان. والأرض وضعها للأنام فيها فاكهة ونخل ذات الأكمام والحب ذو العصف والريحان. فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان؟ خلق الإنسان من صلصال كالفخار وخلق الجن من مارج من نار. فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان؟ رب المشرقين ورب المغربين. فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان؟ مرج البحرين يلتقيان بينهما برزخ لا يبغيان. فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان؟ يخرج منهما اللؤلؤ والمرجان. فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان؟ وله الجوار المنشآت في البحر كالأعلام. فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان؟ كل من عليها فان ويبقى وجه ربك ذو الجلال والإكرام. فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان؟ يسأله من في السماوات والأرض كل يوم هو في شأن. فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان؟ سنفرغ لكم أيها الثقلان. فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان؟ يا معشر الجن والإنس إن استطعتم أن تنفذوا من أنقاض السماوات والأرض فانقذوا لا تنفذون إلا بسلطان. فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان؟ يرسل عليكما شواظ من نار ونحاس فلا تنتصران. فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان؟ فإذا انشقت السماء وفكانت وردات كالدهان. فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان؟ فيومئذ لا يسأل عن ذنبه إنس ولا جان. فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان؟ يعرف المجرمون بسيماهم فيؤخذ من النواصي والأقدام. فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان؟ هذه جهنم التي يكذب بها المجرمون يطوفون بينها وبين حميم آن. فبأي آلاء ربكما ربكما تكذبان ولمن خاف مقام ربه جنتان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان ذوات أفنان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان فيهما عينان تجريان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان فيهما من كل فاكهة زوجان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان متكئين على فرش بطائنها من استبرق وجنى الجنتين دان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان فيهن قصرات الطرف لم يتمثهن إنس قبلهم ولا جان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان كينان الياقوت والمرجان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان هل جزاء الإحسان إلا الإحسان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان ومن دونهما جنتان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان مدهامتان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان فيهما عينان نضاختان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان فيهما فاكهة ونخل ورمان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان فيهن خيرات حسان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان حور مقصورات في الخيام فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان لم يطمثهن إنس قبلهم ولا جان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان متكئين على رفرف خضر وأبقري حسان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان تبارك اسم ربك ذي الجلال والإكرام صدق الله العلي العظيم صلوات رحم الله من قرأ السورة المباركة الفاتحة.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد اللهم إني أسألك وأتوجه إليك بنبيك نبي الرحمة محمد صلى الله عليه وآله يا أبا القاسم يا رسول الله يا إمام الرحمة يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله يا أبا الحسن يا أمير المؤمنين يا علي بن أبي طالب يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله يا فاطمة الزهراء يا بنت محمد يا قرة عين الرسول يا سيدتنا ومولاتنا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيهة عند الله اشفعي لنا عند الله يا أبا محمد يا حسن بن علي أيها المجتبى يا ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله يا أبا عبد الله يا حسين بن علي أيها الشهيد يا ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله يا أبا الحسن يا علي بن حسين يا زين العابدين يا ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله يا أبا جعفر يا محمد بن علي أيها الباقر يا ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله يا أبا عبد الله يا جعفر بن محمد أيها الصادق يا ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله يا أبا الحسن يا موسى بن جعفر أيها الكاظم يا ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله يا أبا الحسن يا علي بن موسى أيها الرضا يا ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله يا أبا جعفر يا محمد بن علي أيها التقي الجواد يا ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله يا أبا الحسن يا علي بن محمد أيها الهادي النقي يا ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا يا أبا محمد يا حسن بن علي أيها الزكي العسكري يا ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله يا وسي الحسن والخلف الحجة أيها القائم المنتظر المهدي يا ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله يا وجيها عند الله يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله حاجات يا سادتي وموالي إني توجهت بكم عمتي وعدتي ليوم فقري وهاجتي إلى الله وتوسلت بكم إلى الله واستشفعت بكم إلى الله فاشفعوا لي عند الله واستنقذوني من ذنوبي عند الله فإنكم وسيلتي إلى الله وبحبكم وبقربكم أرجو نجاة من الله فكونوا عند الله رجائي يا سادتي يا أولياء الله صلى الله عليهم أجمعين ولعن الله أعداء الله وظالميهم من الأولين والآخرين آمين رب العالمين.
بر محمد وعلی محمد صلوات. ہائے ظاہرا ہائے حیدر ہائے ظاہرا قبر زہرا بنا رہے ہیں علی، قبر زہرا بنا رہے ہیں علی، اپنی غربت چھپا رہے ہیں علی، قبر زہرا بنا رہے ہیں علی، اپنی غربت چھپا رہے ہیں علی، کیوں کمر جھک گئی ہے مولا کی، کیوں کمر جھک گئی ہے مولا کی، کس کی میت اٹھا رہے ہیں علی، اپنی غربت چھپا رہے ہیں علی، قبر زہرا بنا رہے ہیں علی، اپنی غربت چھپا رہے ہیں علی، وقت تلقین زخمی شانوں کو، وقت تلقین زخمی شانوں کو، دھیرے دھیرے ہلا رہے ہیں علی، اپنی غربت چھپا رہے ہیں علی، قبر زہرا بنا رہے ہیں علی، اپنی غربت چھپا رہے ہیں علی، اپنی گردن پہ نیل رسی کا، اپنی گردن پہ نیل رسی کا، بیٹیوں سے چھپا رہے ہیں علی، اپنی غربت چھپا رہے ہیں علی، قبر زہرا بنا رہے ہیں علی، اپنی غربت چھپا رہے ہیں علی، رات ہوگی تو دیں گے غسل و کفن، رات ہوگی تو دیں گے غسل و کفن، آسماں دیکھے جا رہے ہیں علی، اپنی غربت چھپا رہے ہیں علی، قبر زہرا بنا رہے ہیں علی، अपनी गुर्बत छुपा रहे हैं अली। एक ज़हरा एक अपनी गुर्बत का, एक ज़हरा एक अपनी गुर्बत का, दो जनाज़े उठा रहे हैं अली। अपनी गुर्बत छुपा रहे हैं अली। कब्र ज़हरा बना रहे हैं अली। अपनी गुर्बत छुपा रहे हैं अली। वर मोहम्मद व आल मोहम्मद सल्लल्लाहु।
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Dr. Sayyid Shabbir Kirmani, respected elders, brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. So Fatiha is requested for the Salah Sawab of the Marhumi listed on the screen and for all Marhumin. Al-Fatiha. Ayyam is requested for the names listed on the screen and for all those who need here and elsewhere. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. أَمَّن يُجِيبُ الْمُضْطَرَّ إِذَا دَعَاهُ يَكْشِفُ السُّوءَ 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 أَمَّن يُجِيبُ الْمُضْطَرَّ إِذَا دَعَاهُ يَكْشِفُ السُّوءَ. Guest Noha reciter, we are honored to welcome Noha Khan Zishan Abadi to Masjid Hayy for a heartfelt for Noha tomorrow, December 4th, as we commemorate the wafat of Fatimiyya al-Zahra. Please join us at 7 p.m. for Niyaz, followed by Quran and Marsha at 7:45 p.m. 7th Annual Shop with the Sheikh and a Cop event. The Masjid al-Hayy Irish team is excited to host the 7th Annual Shop with the Sheikh and a Cop event in partnership with Sanford Police Department and Seminole County Public Schools. Each child will select a gift valued up to $75, wrap it, and enjoy holiday treats. You can help by sponsoring a child with a $75 donation, volunteering to assist with the selection and wrapping, or spreading the word. To make a contribution, please Zelle at donate@masjidalhayy.org and specify Shop Sheikh. For more information, please contact Sister Hana Rahim at 407-683-4427. At this time, I'd like to call Dr. Sayyid Shabbir Kirmani for tonight's lecture with the loud salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم فوض أمري إلى الله إن الله بصير بالعباد ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل ونعم المولى ونعم النصير والصلاة والسلام والتحية والإكرام على الرسول المسدد المصطفى الأمجد المحمود الأحمد الذي سمي في السماء بأحمد وفي الأرض بأبي القاسم محمد اللهم صل على محمد وعلى أهل بيت الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين المنتجبين الذين أذهب الله عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا الله وقل رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي أما بعد قال الله تبارك وتعالى في كتاب الكريم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم هو الأول هو الآخر هو الظاهر هو الباطن صدق الله العلي العظيم صلوا على محمد وآل محمد اللهم صل. My respected elders, brothers and sisters in Islam and Iman, here or across the globe, wherever you may be hearing my voice, Salamun alaykum jami'an wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Question: what leads to the rise or the decline of a civilization? Tonight, moving on the second level of our conversation, which we began last night, where we talked about the Lady of Light as the revolutionary mother who inspired a generation of leaders for Karbala and beyond. And we talked about how her magnanimity led to the stand in Karbala, or at least the inspiration of it. The seeds were sown by the personality, of course, of Rasulullah, Amir al-Mu'mineen, and indeed Fatima al-Zahra as a mother. And having said that, we are now going to the second phase of our conversation, which will be the bulk of tonight and inshallah tomorrow night, life permitting. And that is on the issue of social and economic justice as taught by the scenario of fadak. That is justice beyond fadak. That was this a matter of fadak or something else? And why is it that Bibi Fatima's stand is so important? And what does it teach us? Not only us. What does it teach generations of human beings at large about the importance of standing for truth, justice, and what is important in society? Therefore, tonight I want to look at a few things with you. Number one, how is it that the revolutionary nature but also the hidden nature of Bibi Fatima is something to note, and how sometimes the hidden can be more important than even what is apparent? Number one. Number two, when it comes to this, what was the issue of fadak and why is it important in the history of civilization, in the history of Islam? Not only from our view, but from the view of general Muslims and the world at large. The third element is, how does this have to do with economic and social justice in our world, and what does Bibi's khutbah in Fadak shed light on in particular as it relates to this? The final element being the tragedy of the Lady of Light, which we'll discuss inshallah tonight, and how difficult that was for the Ahlul Bayt, and how that teaches us and reminds us how we should be adhering to justice in whatever capacity that we can, not only for our betterment, not only for the betterment of our families, not only for the betterment of our communities, but for the betterment of broader society, inshallah. This is our agenda for tonight. Wherever you are, here in Florida or across the globe, send a salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali. At the first level, when it comes to Bibi Fatima, we said that last night we talked about this dynamic of her sacrifice, her intelligence, her intellect, her bravery, her courage, and the respect of Rasulullah for her as a leader. So when it comes to, for example, the sacrificial nature that we discuss in Karbala and the self-sacrificing nature, you'll find that it was the person who was first defending the right of the Ahlul Bayt was Bibi Fatima. Although she's from Ahlul Bayt, but for example, the first one who went door to door to remind people about Ghadir, which I highlighted last night, was Bibi Fatima. That she went to the people, did you forget Ghadir? Were you not there standing up for that right? Another element is her legacy of courage and bravery to be able to do that. It wasn't the easiest thing to do that. This led to perhaps the rise of someone like Zainab salamullahi alayha, who says, "Ma ra'aytu illa jamila," afterwards, and has that courage to be able to do what she did after Karbala, number one. Number two is the second aspect of this great personality, that she teaches us about the hidden nature and the importance of it. The ayah that I just recited at the beginning is from Surah Hadid, the 57th chapter of the Quran, referring to Hadid meaning iron. And the third verse, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Huwa al-awwala, huwa al-Akhir, huwa al-Zahir, huwa al-Batin. He is the first, He is the last, referring to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, of course. And He is the Zahir, He is the manifest, and huwa al-Batin, and He is the hidden. What this means, different ulama and interpreters and exegetes and mufassirin have come to different understandings on this. But one thing that we realize is there is the manifest power of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and there's also the hidden power of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which we may not fully be aware of. Similarly, when it comes to the Lady of Light, you may find that she is one of the glimpses or the tajalli of Allah's hidden manifestation of power. That is, we may not understand fully here, but just because we don't fully understand doesn't necessarily mean that it's not important. It may be just as important, if not more important. So this is one dynamic. The same way that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has manifest attributes, He also has hidden attributes. Similarly, when it comes to this dynamic, there may be manifest outward forms of the strength that Allah gave to the believers, such as the strength He may have given in a manifest, apparent way to Rasulullah, to the way of, for example, Amir al-Mu'mineen in the battlefield. But there may be some hidden traits that Allah gives of strength, of courage, of nobility, of piety, that He maybe have given to Bibi Fatima, that is something that is a shadow or a glimpse of her magnanimity that we're not fully aware of, but it's in the realm of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that she has a high status. Recall last night I mentioned that just because someone is not known amongst the general public and their merits are not publicly known amongst the general public, doesn't mean that person doesn't have value. I remind you that Alexis de Tocqueville, Alexis in English, Alexis in French, he was a French diplomat who came to America 200 years ago. And when he came to America, he went across the eastern board of America, and he said, America is a very strange place. Funny for a Frenchman to say that, but nonetheless he said it. He found things to be strange. And he said one of the things that is very strange that he said in America at that time, 200 years ago, he said everything in America is based on money. He said even the quality of a book they assess based on how many copies it has sold. He said how many copies a book has sold doesn't tell you anything about whether the book is good or not. In Farsi and Urdu and languages like this, they have a term called zawq. Zawq referring to taste. Not everyone has a taste for coffee or knows how to distinguish. Not everyone has a taste for certain things. Not everyone has a taste for poetry. That doesn't mean that it doesn't have value. And I understood this when I looked at the reading lists of some of the people who run the world or are very active or very prominent in the world, for example. Bill Gates, for example, he's read a book, a series on energy. And he's the author himself of the book of the series says, I don't think anyone in the world has read my books cover to cover except Bill Gates. So the reading list of certain people is very different than the reading list of the popular conscience. So he said America's strange in that everything is based on how many copies it sells, how much money someone has determines their values, and many other things. So now when it comes to this, I'm saying this because in the realm of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, none of this may matter. In the realm of Allah, Allah said Ibrahim by himself is an ummah. Ibrahim, one individual by himself is an ummah, a nation by himself. So it doesn't necessarily mean volume, number one. Number two, when it comes to this, especially as we're discussing Fadak tonight, one thing that's very important for us to discuss and understand is when Bibi Fatima talks about Fadak, she's talking about Fadak, but she's not talking about Fadak. Meaning, she's not really concerned with the land of Fadak. She's not really concerned with the property perhaps as much as the attributes of the traits of the believers, the lack of traits of the believers, the ability of the believers, the love and camaraderie amongst the believers. Allow me to explain. There's a book that has been a book series that's been perhaps the most read amongst the intelligentsia who run at least American society, and that is, it's a book called The Story of Civilization by Dr. Will Durant, a very famous historian, and he spent his whole life writing this history of civilization in the world. going from the Egyptian era all the way up through the Napoleonic eras. And he's also written a very condensed form of the book, which is called The Lessons of History by Will and Ariel Durant. His wife was also a historian as well. I say this because some of the bankers, some of the investment bankers, Ray Dalio, the likes of Kirill Sokolov, and many other people have Elon Musk, when asked what books they read, this is a book that constantly comes up. And in that book, the story of civilization in particular, on the chapter in the section or the volume of Caesar and Christ, talking about the Roman Empire, and at the end of it, at the epilogue, he says a line that's noteworthy that many people have quoted. And many people have highlighted that Will Durant says this. After studying all of this era, what does he say? And he says a line that he says that a great civilization is not conquered from without until it is destroyed from within. The idea being the external conquer only happens after internally it has been destroyed. He says, it was Rome, not Rome's conquest by other people who came outward. It was what really brought the decline was her people, her morals, her taxation, her bureaucratic despotism, not my words, Durant's words, and these things, the taxes, and you could go further down the line. And if you mark this in my humble study of the Muslim world and history that I've come across, exactly these things that Durant highlighted are exactly the things that crept into the Muslim world after the demise of Rasulullah. So when you look at this conversation of Bibi Fadak's khutbah, don't just look at it as her talking about Fadak. What she's really talking about is, you have stepped on a path as a leader, as a ruler of this society that is doomed to lead this society to its downfall. And it did. Exactly that will happen. Nepotism came in. People's values declined. Morality declined. People said, look, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if I'm what's right and what's wrong. If I'm in power, that's what matters. And many of these things, the ardent taxation, when they made the system uneven and unfair after Bibi Fatima's khutbah in Fadakiyya, or actually even before it, and even during the time of the second Khalifa and third Khalifa, when it was exacerbated, what happened? If you read history, you'll find it's very clear. They began to say that, these tribes, they should get more money. Well, if you do that and you disbalance the budget, you have to find other forms of income. So what did they do? They taxed other people more. They weren't happy. So what is another thing that Durant mentions? Class struggle. Class struggle arose. Class struggle, which is arising in our world as well right now. So now, having said that, when it comes to Bibi Fatima, do not think of her in just the context of thinking of this, this is just about Fadak. No, this is about Bibi Fatima prophesizing and saying, look, what you're doing right now is going to lead to your decline, and it did. Now, the second level, third level of Khutbah Fadakiyya and the economic and social matters of justice. Bibi Fatima is in a situation. What happened at Fadak? Why is it important? And what's the basis here? Recall that the verses and the traditions about Bibi Fatima are ample. If you go to the Quran, you will find that there are numerous verses which I highlighted yesterday, some of which, and the traditions of the Prophet are very important, that have been documented by all Muslims. In Sahih Bukhari, Sahih Muslim, in Tirmidhi, Ibn Majah, many of the books of our brothers in Ahl Sunnah, so there's no contention on this. Where Rasulullah says, Fatima bad'atun minni, Fatima is a part of me. Where Rasulullah says, Fatima is ummu abiha. Where Rasulullah says, Fatima is sayyidatun nisa'il alameen. Or when Rasulullah says, Fatima bad'atun minni, or for example, when he extends it and says, Fatima, not only is she a part of me, whoever angers her angers me. Why did Rasulullah need to say this? There's something important about why that may need to have been said in terms of the context of what may happen afterwards. So what happened? This is where the crux of this comes to fruition. Now, based on this, now I'm highlighting where is this khutbah fadakiyya? Because somebody may say that you just brought this from your books. The reality is the documentation of this is quite clear from the books of the general Muslim community. Of course, our scholars, Sheikh Saduq and others have documented it, But in the Muslim corpus, the general Muslim corpus, not the one that follows the school of the Ahlul Bayt, not our school of thought, the general Muslim corpus, during the time of the 10th and the 11th Imam, during the time of Imam al-Naqi and Imam Askari, there was a writer, historian, a scholar by the name of Ibn Tahir al-Tayfur, who wrote a book called Balaghatun Nisa, the eloquence of women. And in that he highlighted different khutbat and different sermons that had been given by women throughout the history of Islam. And in that he documents the khutbah fadakiyya. If this is something that is not that is contentious and not agreed upon by the world, then why would he document it there in that book? As a scholar who's not a Shia scholar, he's documenting this as a non-Shia scholar, that this khutbah fadakiyya took place, number one. Number two, when it comes to this dynamic, what does Bibi say? When she was told about Fadak being confiscated, first of all, what is Fadak? Fadak is a land that was about 140 kilometers from Medina. It is near Khaybar, as you know, after the conquest of Khaybar. It was something that was given as part of Hayy. The ruling of Hayy in Islamic law is not war booty because there was no war or bloodshed for it. And in the Hayy, what happens is, essentially what's given in Hayy is the right of the Prophet to dispose of it as he wills, and he gives that to his daughter Fatimiyya al-Zahra. What does Fatimiyya al-Zahra do with it? She uses it. First, there are employees on the land. She uses it for the benefits of the Muslim Ummah and various other things. Nonetheless, eventually, when they say we are confiscating this land of Fadak, because why did they need to do it? It was clear, because they had mismanaged their budget. When they mismanaged the budget, they said, we need to figure out a way to get more income. One of the ways, they said, this looks like great property we can take for ourselves and get some revenue. And so when this happened, Bibi Fatima, first of all, realized that her employees had been sacked, who are getting livelihoods. This is one aspect. But more importantly, in addition to that as well, she's trying to highlight that, look, my rights as the daughter of Rasulullah are being usurped. If that's the case, what on earth will happen to other people's rights? So just think about this for a moment. If the daughter of Rasulullah's rights are not being considered, what will happen to the middle class or the lower class of society? They have no hope for any fairness or justice. So in that environment, Bibi Fatima gets up and she proceeds towards the court of Abu Bakr, who's the first Khalifa. When she gets there, by the way, I have no interest in dividing the Muslim world. As our scholars have said, our Muslim brethren are our Muslims, they are our nafs, they are ourselves. Remember one thing, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made us for something. Allah made us ashraful makhluqat. But remember one thing, Allah did not make us, not my words, the words of ulama, who I learn from and benefit from, said Allah did not make us to fight each other. That's for sure. Allah did not make us to fight one another, and especially not mu'mineen and believers, and especially Muslims or people who are trying to do the right thing. The principle being that the track on which Islam ended up and the track on which it started ended up being different. There were different tracks. And I'm highlighting this simply because to remind the Muslim world, where did this track originate and where did the split happen? If we are able to get back to there, some of the people who are looking for the truth may be able to get to what is the truth. And that's what's really important. It's not on the basis of, I'm from this tribe or you're from this tribe, I'm from this group, you're from this group. No, it's because simply, if I want to get to the truth, I need to understand and assess this honestly and diligently and fairly. And by the way, this is one of the main reasons many people who were born into Sunni families, or they were reverted into Sunni families at first and became Shia, they highlight the main reason, the haqq of Zahra, the haqq of Fatimiyya al-Zahra, as one of the main reasons that helped awaken them to realize that what happened after Rasulullah was not Islam. It was Muslims oftentimes playing with the domain of Islam, but it was not Islam as intended by Rasulullah, as intended by Islam. So now she comes there. When she comes there, she begins to speak. When she begins to speak in front of the first Khalifa, she begins to highlight the praise of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, hamd of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And she goes on that for some time. Then she highlights the merits of her father Rasulullah. And she said, our father is the one who brought you to light, who gave you guidance, who Allah through him gave you guidance. She said, you used to drink water from filthy ponds. Why is she saying this? She said, you used to chew leaves, used to fight amongst each other, warmonger and many other things. My father is the one who brought you out from the darkness towards light, so to speak. Why is that important? One of the reasons that's vital and that's important is because she's trying to help them understand what is the position, the maqam of her father, not as her father, but as the Prophet. About what are all these mercies that Allah gave to them and blessings that Allah gave to them, which she's about to explain in a moment, you've belied and you've been negligent of. And Allah says in the Quran, وَلَئِن شَكَرْتُمْ لَأَزِيدَنَّكُمْ وَلَئِن كَفَرْتُمْ إِنَّ عَذَابِي لَشَدِيدٌ. That if you are grateful, we'll increase it, and if you don't, and if you're not, then our chastisement is severe. So she's saying, and she's highlighting, you yesterday, the Muslim world, were nothing. By the way, Durant highlights this as well, and many historians have highlighted this, that how did the Arabs conquer the world? It was none other than the vision of Muhammad that elevated their vision. Now they saw him, they didn't necessarily see him as a prophet, but they had to admit that his raising the vision of that community made them from people who didn't know left from right into people who were able to conquer the world. So she's saying, you're in this position of power where you're conquering over the world, but remember for a moment until yesterday, you didn't know left from right, in my words. And she's trying to highlight that it was my father who, through the blessings of Allah, came and gave you guidance. And then she continues. And then she says, it was my Ibn Am, that is my brother, my father's brother, that is her husband, Amir al-Mu'mineen, who brought you victory in every battle. Where you didn't have the courage to stand up for battle, where it was you who were there. Having said this, one aspect of the equation may be that there may be some human element of this, perhaps. That they didn't realize that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala chose Ali ibn Abi Talib to deliver victory. And there are certain things that in the traditions, even the brothers and the scholars of the Ahlul Sunnah mention. For example, Umar is on the record having said that I wish that I had one of these traits of Ali, that had I been given it, I would have accepted that over a red-haired camel or a red-haired horse, which was considered like the Ferrari of the time. Or I would have accepted that and I would have wanted that over the life of Nuh in other narrations, other people had said. One of the things, as you know, they had given the proposal to Fatima al-Zahra. The first Khalifa and the second Khalifa, at the time of the marriage of Bibi Fatima, both of them had proposed, and Rasulullah didn't refuse. He said, Allah has made this decision is up to Allah. Whoever makes this, and Allah's arrangement was that it would be Amir al-Mu'mineen that would marry Fatima al-Zahra. But he said one of them was that. One of them was, the other thing that the second Khalifa said was that I wish that the ayah that said, for example, وَسَدَّ الْأَبْوَابَ إِلَّا بَابًا, that all the doors are to be closed except the door of Ali and Fatima, which will remain to open into the masjid, that honor was second to none. I wish I had that. And many other things. Having said that, coming back to the khutbah of Fatakiyya, Bibi Fatima highlights this dynamic of saying that Allah, hamd of Allah, she talks about the merits of her father and Allah's delivering guidance to the believers through Rasulullah, then victory being delivered through Ali al-Murtada. And then she gets into the ahkam and the things that had to do with why we do what we do. For example, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave you tawheed so that it fights you away from shirk. Allah gave you the concept of zakat so that it purifies your wealth. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wanted that there is love amongst your hearts, so there's justice in society. And she kept saying these things. Why is she talking about morality? Why is she talking about the philosophy of ahkam? Why is she talking about all of these things in a khutbah that's supposed to be about fadak? What she's ultimately highlighting is simply this, that today it's fadak, tomorrow it's everyone's right. Tomorrow, it's exactly what Durant said. Tomorrow, it's the people. Tomorrow, it's the morals. Tomorrow, it's the taxes. Tomorrow, it's the bureaucratic nepotism. Tomorrow, it's the trade deficit. Tomorrow, it's this. All of these things are going to lead to the crumbling of society. This is an issue of justice. This is an issue of righteousness. This is an issue of what is haqq. Not just about being the daughter of Rasulullah. Having said that, even if nothing else, Bibi highlighted the dynamics. What did she say? She said, okay. She said, Ibn Abi Quhafa, referring to the first Khalifa. She said, even if does it make sense? And is it fair that you inherit from your father and I don't inherit from my father? As per the Quran. Recall that Bibi Fidda is a servant in the house of Bibi Fatima. And Bibi Fidda didn't speak except from the Quran. She didn't speak except from the Quran. So if the one who's Bibi Fidda, who learned from Bibi Fatima al-Zahra about the Quran. You don't think Bibi Fatima knows the Quran? As the poet says, remember we mentioned last night, where is Bibi Fatima in the Quran? One of the places, Mubahila. And the poet says, Sare shareek baz mein kisa the mahaz par, tha hukm kibriya ka taqaza mubahila. था हुक्म किबरिया का तकाजा मुबाहिला और वो तो निसाउकुम के लिए आ गई बतूल, वो तो निसाउकुम के लिए आ गई बतूल, वरना तो जीत सकती थी फिजा मुबाहिला. वो तो निसाउकुम के लिए आ गई बतूल. The poet here is saying that the ayah necessitated that Fatima al-Zahra come because it said nisaukum. But if it was just to win the debate, Fidda could have won the debate. Fidda's Quran was so good that she could have won the debate. But it was because of the necessity of the ayah that Fatima al-Zahra came. So then she says, وَوَرِثَ سُلَيْمَانَ دَاوُد. In the khutbah Fadak, she says to Ibn Abi Quhafa, the first Khalifa, and she says very clearly, she says, number one, she says, first of all, وَوَرِثَ سُلَيْمَانَ دَاوُد. Sulaiman inherited from Dawood. Or for example, يَرِثُنِي وَيَرِثُ مِنْ آلِ يَعْقُوب. For example, talking about Yaqub, Israel. As you know, Yaqub is the father of Yusuf, that there was inheritance towards Yusuf. All of these things are being mentioned. And eventually, the response comes back, yes, but your father said to us that we, the prophets, we don't inherit. Where? In the Quran? No, in a hadith. So what happened to the person who was standing next to the first Khalifa, who had become the second Khalifa, who said, Hasbuna Kitabullah, for us the book of Allah is enough. Bibi Fatima is answering everything from the Quran. Everything from the Quran. So why don't you respond from the Quran? No, what do you respond from? A tradition. Where what is it said? In my ear. There's no other witnesses. So this is the challenge that Bibi Fatima was just awakening people. But then she says another line. And she addressed the Ansar. The Ansar, we recall, when the Hijrah happens, there are Muhajirin and there's Ansar. Muhajirin are the migrants, Ansar are the people of Medina. She says to them, you have power, you have position, you've gone to battle. Where is your honor? Where is your courage? Why don't you stand on this matter? This is the point that I wanted to drive at. Bibi Fatima was not just talking to him. She was talking to society. None of them stood for Bibi Fatima. And the reality is that haqq, and historians have documented this as well, very clearly, that justice, it's not because one person violating justice. It's usually everyone else watching while it happens and not doing anything. When injustice is happening, people watch and observe and they do nothing. That's what leads to Karbala. That's what leads to Fadak. That's what leads to X, Y, and Z. And that's the reality that Bibi Fatima, she wasn't speaking just to the first Khalifa, she was speaking to broader society. Wake up, what has happened to this religion? She did what's called i'timam hujjah. Ajrukum Allah. There's a lot more to be said, but the essence, and I tried to be as less emotional as possible, as practical and analytical about this, so the world understands what this is about. Nonetheless, Ajrukum Allah, there's not much else to say. These are the nights for Aza and Majalis. Ajrukum Allah. We turn our hearts and our minds to Medina, the land of the Prophet, and we give our condolences to the Imam of our time. They say during the time of the sixth Imam, the Imam was sitting in the Masjid with some of his companions. When he was sitting in the Masjid with some of his companions, the narrations say that one of his companions came into the Masjid in a state where they were distraught, in a state where they were very worried, in a state where they were weeping, in a state where they were crying, in a state where they did not look normal, they did not look like they were okay. The Imam said, what is the matter? Why are you in this state? Why are you disheveled? Why are you crying? Why are you weeping in this way? He said, Imam, I saw a scene, I saw a scenario that was very hard on me, that really took its toll on me, that's taken its burden on me. He said, what did you see? He said that I saw that there was a woman in the city. This is during the time of the sixth Imam. She was in the middle of the town. She was in the middle of the city. And the rulers' henchmen, the rulers' soldiers, the rulers' men, they were treating her very roughly. roughly. They were treating her in a terrible way. Eventually they struck her, and they struck her in her side, on the side of her body. It seemed that they struck her where her ribs may have been. Eventually the Imam said, what happened then? He says, at that junction I heard that she cried, La'na on the killers of Fatimah az-Zahra. Whoever those killers may have been. Is it not true that we say that whoever was the one who caused the death of the daughter of Rasulullah, who is Bad'atum minni, Rasulullah says, who is the father, Abiha, the mother of her father, whoever that may be. Eventually she said this line. The narrations say that the Imam got up and he went to the prayer section in particular, and he started to pray, and eventually he separated himself from his believers, from the other friends who were there. He began to worship, and he began to pray, and he began to do istijabat to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in a state of dua. Eventually, after some time, another believer came into the vicinity of the masjid and came to the Imam. He said, Yabna Rasulillah, you know that lady who we were just told the news about some time ago, that lady, she has been freed. At that junction, when the Imam heard this, he was jubilant for a moment. He was happy for a moment. He said, send this amount for her, and send that, and call her onto us so that we may speak to her. Eventually, she was brought before the Imam, and she says that we had not said this for any wealth or any payment. We said it because it is haqq. She said, what is it that led you to say this line, that may there be the la'na on the killers of Fatimah az-Zahra in the state where you were struck? She says, when I was struck, they struck me in such a way, in such a manner that my ribs were afflicted. When my ribs were afflicted, I remembered the tragedy of Fatimah az-Zahra. They say Imam as-Sadiq began to cry on his grandmother Fatimah az-Zahra. This is how much it affected the Ahlul Bayt. Azadaro do jumle, zahmat tamam, pursa dijiye Imam zamana ko, pursa dijiye आले मोहम्मद को. हम जब भी आइम्मा के मसाइब होते हैं, कहते हैं कि जब इमाम हसन की मुसीबत होती है, इमाम हुसैन का जिक्र जब होता है, हम कहते हैं सैयदा को पुरसा दिया जाए. आज शायद पूरे 12 इमामों को पुरसा दिया जाए, रसूल खुदा को पुरसा दिया जाए, हुसैन गरीब को अपनी माँ का पुरसा दिया जाए. मरहला ये है कि उलमा कहते हैं कि क्या पहले वाक़या दर हुआ या दरवाजे का वाक़या पहले हुआ या खुतबा फदकिया पहले हुआ? उलमा बयान करते हैं कि पहले दर का वाक़या पहले हुआ, दरवाजे का वाक़या पहले हुआ. यानी कि जब बीबी खुतबा फदक देने गई, बीबी जख्मी थी, बीबी के पहलू शिकस्ता थे. उस अय्याम में बीबी ने, उन अय्याम में बीबी ने खुतबा दिया, अजरुकुम अल्लाह. ये सब आपके सामने ये मंजर है, इमाम सादिक का मंजर आपके सामने है. मगर एक और मंजर है जो आयतुल्लाह, जो नजफी मराशी हैं, जिन्होंने इतने पूरी ज़िंदगी किताबें लिखी, उन्होंने कहा मैंने एक आलम देखा. ये उनका जिक्र है कि मैंने ख्वाब में एक आलम देखा. ये कोई हुज्जत नहीं, वो बस अपना बयान दे रहे हैं कि एक मर्जा के तौर पर, एक मुज्तहिद के तौर पर उन्होंने क्या देखा. उन्होंने देखा कि इमाम वक्त अपने मुसल्ले पे हैं और मुसल्ले पे गिरिया कर रहे हैं. आयतुल्लाह नजफी मरशी कहते हैं मैंने ये मंजर देखा और फिर मैंने सामने देखा इमाम आली मकाम के सामने कुछ कील हैं जो जिन पर लहू है. इमाम से पूछा गया कि ये क्या है? इमाम ने कहा शहाबुद्दीन, उनका नाम शहाबुद्दीन था. क्या तुम जानते हो कि ये क्या है? उन्होंने कहा इमाम आप ही बताइए. उन्होंने कहा ये वो कील हैं जो सैयदा के जिस्म अत्हर में पैवस्त हो गए थे. इमाम देख के गिरिया कर रहे थे. ये इतने साल बाद इमाम ने देख के गिरिया किया. मगर मैं एक जुमला अर्ज करूंगा कि ये क्या हुआ. ये जुमला क्या है कि जब ये हो चुका, इमाम ने शायद कील देखे हो, शायद सुना हो, मगर एक और इमाम امام ہیں جن کا نام حسن مجتبی ہے. وہ حسن مجتبی کون؟ کہتے ہیں کہ امام حسن مجتبی ایک گلی سے نہیں گزرتے تھے مدینے میں. کیوں نہیں گزرتے تھے اس گلی سے؟ جب بھی پوچھتے تھے لوگ اے امام حسن مجتبی آپ اس گلی سے کیوں نہیں گزرتے؟ آپ طول لیتے ہیں، آپ لمبا راستہ لیتے ہیں، آپ اس گلی سے کبھی گزرتے نہیں. امام نے کہا کہ میں کیا کروں، مجھے ایک منظر یاد آ جاتا ہے. کیا منظر یاد آ جاتا ہے؟ فرزند بطول، میں ایک چھوٹا سن تھا ہمارا اور میری ماں پہ وہ تشدد ہوا، ظالم نے میری ماں پر ایسا تماچا مارا. جب بھی میں اس گلی سے گزرتا ہوں مجھے وہ منظر یاد آ جاتا ہے. سلام ہو حسن مجتبی پر، اور سلام ہو سید السجاد پر جو کربلا سے کوفہ و شام تلک تماچے دیکھتے جا رہے تھے، کبھی اس بیوی پر کبھی اس بیوی پر. الا لعنت اللہ علی القوم الظالمین وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون. صلى الله عليك يا رسول الله، صلى الله عليك يا أمير المؤمنين، صلى الله عليك يا فاطمة الزهراء سيدة النساء العالمين، صلى الله عليك يا حسن المجتبى. السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين. معتم حسين يا حسين حسين.
حسین 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 یا حسین یا حسین. در کے پیچھے گر گئی ہے تیری زہرا یا نبی. در کے پیچھے گر گئی ہے تیری زہرا یا نبی. در کے پیچھے گر گئی ہے تیری زہرا یا نبی. آگ پر جیسے گری، آگ پر جیسے گری بالی سکینہ یا نبی. در کے پیچھے گر گئی ہے تیری زہرا یا نبی. در کے پیچھے گر گئی ہے تیری زہرا یا نبی. تہمت ہذیان پر باپا کبھی گریا کیا، گردن حیدر میں رسی دے کے کر نوحہ کیا. پھر مجھے دربار جانے، پھر مجھے دربار جانے نے رلایا یا نبی. در کے پیچھے گر گئی ہے تیری زہرا یا نبی. در کے پیچھے گر گئی ہے تیری زہرا یا نبی. ہائے وہ گھر جس میں رہتے ہیں علی جیسے امام، جس کے در پر روز رک کر آپ کرتے تھے سلام. بھول بیٹھے ہیں یہ لوگ، بھول بیٹھے ہیں یہ لوگ اس گھر کا رستہ یا نبی. در کے پیچھے گر گئی ہے تیری زہرا یا نبی. در کے پیچھے گر گئی ہے تیری زہرا یا نبی. ایک حجرے میں سمٹ آئی ہے دنیا ایمان, کوئی سارے شہر میں کرتا نہیں ان کو سلام. دہر کا مشکل کشا ہے, دہر کا مشکل کشا ہے, اب اکیلا یا نبی در کے پیچھے گر گئی ہے تیری زہرا یا نبی, در کے پیچھے گر گئی ہے تیری زہرا یا نبی. شبلی نعمانی کا الفاروق میں ہے یہ بیان, گھر جلانے کی مسلسل دے رہے تھے دھمکیاں, پھر بھی زہرا نے علی کو, پھر بھی زہرا نے علی کو ہے بچایا یا نبی, در کے پیچھے گر گئی ہے تیری زہرا یا نبی, در کے پیچھے گر گئی ہے تیری زہرا. جس کے بچوں کو خدا کل خلد کی جاگیر دے, جس کی عصمت کی گواہی آیت تطہیر دے, ایسی معصومہ کے در کو, ایسی معصومہ کے در کو ہے جلایا یا نبی, در کے پیچھے گر گئی ہے تیری زہرا یا نبی, گھر کے در کے پیچھے گر گئی ہے تیری زہر. گھر کا دروازہ گرا تو ہو گیا محسن شہید, رسمان ظلم میں جکڑا ہے قرآن مجید. فاطمہ کے لب پہ ہے, فاطمہ کے لب پہ ہے صحبت علیہ یا نبی, در کے پیچھے گر گئی ہے تیری زہرا یا نبی, در کے پیچھے گر گئی ہے. مثل غازی مادر شبیر پشت در گری, مثل اکبر اپنے بابا کو صدا دیتی رہی. کان زخمی ہو گئے, کان زخمی ہو گئے مثل سکینہ یا نبی, در کے پیچھے گر گئی ہے تیری زہرا یا نبی, در کے پیچھے گر گئی ہے. گوشوار سیدہ کے ٹوٹ کر کہنے لگے, چہرہ اقدس ہے زخمی, کان بھی زخمی ہوئے. ایک ظالم نے جو مارا, ایک ظالم نے جو مارا ہے تماچا یا نبی, در کے پیچھے گر گئی ہے تیری زہرا یا نبی, در کے پیچھے گر گئی ہے تیری زہرا. میں گری اور میرے اوپر جلتا دروازہ گرا, پسلیاں ٹوٹی ہیں زخمی ہو گیا بازو میرا. اب تو کروٹ لے نہیں, اب تو کروٹ لے نہیں سکتی ہے زہرا یا نبی, दर के पीछे गिर गई है तेरी ज़हरा या नबी दर के पीछे गिर गई है तेरी ज़हरा जालिमों को अब मुआफ़ी की ना मिल पाएगी भीख हो ना जाएंगे कभी मेरे जनाजे में शरीक उठ रहा है रात को उठ रहा है रात को मेरा जनाजा या नबी दर के पीछे गिर गई है तेरी ज़हरा या नबी दर के पीछे गिर गई है तेरी
السلام عليك يا رسول الله السلام عليك يا أمير المؤمنين السلام عليك يا فاطمة الزهراء سيدة النساء العالمين السلام عليك يا حسن المجتبى ورحمة الله وبركاته السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله وعلى الأرواح التي هلت بفنائك عليكم مني جميعا سلام الله أبدا ما بقيت وبقي الليل والنهار ولا جعله الله آخر الأهل مني لزيارتكم السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين خصوصا سيدي ومولاي أبا الفضل العباس بن أمير المؤمنين وقاسم بن الحسن ومسلم بن الأخير وهاني بن الله وحبيب بن مظاهر والهر الشهيد الرياحي السلام عليكم يا شهداء كربلاء جميعا ورحمة الله وبركاته السلام عليك يا مولى وابن مولى السلام عليك يا خليفة الرحمن السلام عليك يا شريك القرآن السلام عليك يا إمامنا وإمام الإنس والجان رحمة الله وبركاته السلام عليك يا مولى وابن مولى السلام عليك يا علي بن موسى الله كن شفيعنا وشفيع وليا في يوم الزلة وفقنا الله لزيارتك يا مولا ورزقنا الله شفاعتك في الدنيا والآخرة وعلى أختك فاطمة المعصومة جميعا ورحمة الله وبركاته السلام عليك يا مولانا يا صاحب العصر والزمان أحسن الله لك الأداء في جدك فاطمة الزهراء الأمان 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 السلام عليك يا خليفة الرحمن السلام عليك يا شريك القرآن السلام عليك يا إمامنا وإمام الإنس والجان ورحمة الله وبركاته اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم اللهم كن لوليك الحجة بن الحسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائه في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا ودليلا وعينا حتى تسكنه أرزك توأ وتمتعه فيها سويلا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين على أرواح المؤمنين والمؤمنات صواب الفاتحة